Hello? Hello?
Commissioner Townsend, we've got you.
Okay, thank you. How are you today?
Good. Commissioner Burrows, we're ready.
Well, good evening. It is that time of the evening where we go into our budget special session. I am Tom Burrows, Commissioner at Large, District 2. Tonight, however, I will be acting as Mayor Pro Tem due to the unavailability of Mayor Garner. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that some commissioner, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom, by phone, or on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is participating knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Please be sure you are speaking into a microphone to ensure your comments are heard and an accurate record is made. I will now call the special meeting of the Board of Commissioners for Thursday, June 12th, 2025 to order and ask the clerk to announce the meeting and please call roll.
Good evening. You're hereby notified that a special meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas is scheduled to be conducted in a hybrid format on Thursday, June 12, 2025 at 5 p.m. for a budget workshop in the fifth floor conference room of the Municipal Office Building, 701 North 7th Street, Kansas City, Kansas. Roll call. Davis.
Here.
Bynum. Here. Burrows.
Here.
Townsend.
Here?
Burns.
Here.
Ramirez, we have an absence memo. Hill, we have an absence memo. Kane. Lopez, we have an absence memo. Stites. Garner, we have an absence memo.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tonight, we are scheduled for another in our series of budget workshops. I will turn this meeting over to our Administrator, David Johnston, for remarks and introductions. Mr. Johnston.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrows. We're going to be talking about a couple things tonight. First of all, we're going to be doing an overview on the personnel part of our budget and also doing a community survey feedback. We're going to do a slight review of our 24 budget recap, both in the 24 budget process to create our 25 budget and in our budget retreat of earlier this year to start off our 26 budget process. We had you adopted a budget priority about fiscal sustainability. Last year, one of the steps that you took was adopting a revenue neutral budget that based on our increased tax evaluation for the city and county, we would adopt the same property tax revenue that we had for 24 to apply to the 25 budget year. So that meant no growth in the property tax revenue for the fiscal year 25. We also were able to present and approve a structurally balanced budget for both the city and the county general fund for 25. In 24, we noted that there would be issues with the county general fund, including an anticipated shortfall in 26. So using forecasts back in 24 for what we're anticipating next year, about including the sheriff's jail expenses, which are beyond his control. What I mean by that, he has to serve whatever society sends his way. So we don't know what he has to deal with people that have to use his jail services, his probation services and all that. State law says he has to serve whoever society sends his way. And therefore, we expect to probably see overspending not only in 26 like we forecasted, but in looking at the first quarter and through spending in 25, we're anticipating over budgeting in 25. And one thing, in working closely with his office, he said, I'm going to be over budget in 25, therefore you're going to have to cover my costs. During the revenue neutral budget, we made significant reductions in all the departments of the city and county general funds, some of which we express concerns that may not be sustainable long-term, particularly in personnel and in overtime. The presentation tonight will discuss the status of the 25 budget that was adopted versus actual expenses, and the forecasts that we are using for the 26 budget with various scenarios that we developed internally. We have some concerns that we will discuss, some steps that we've already adopted within 25 to deal with 25 concerns that we also need to address in the 26 anticipated budgets. I will now turn it over to Renee to continue our discussion. So Renee?
Thank you, David. Renee Ramirez, Director of Human Resources. With me this evening from the HR team, to my right are Shakiva Christian, HR Manager, and Stasha Ferguson, HR Partner with Human Resources. And I also have with me today the entire HR team that is sitting here for this presentation. We have been collaborating with the budget team since early February, actually, on the budget process. Just to cover the timelines here on the budget workshops, beginning March 13th is the 2025 budget recap. April 3rd, you all had the debt strategy. April 16th, the county mandates and the historical review. May 15th, the revenues. And today, which brings us today to the personnel costs. This presentation, the agenda for this is the first item. We are going to be covering lots of information regarding human resources and the budgets for the human resources component of our department operations. Budget will be presenting the community survey feedback, the dot talk feedback, and then public input session feedback. So as we move towards exploring the personnel cost for this presentation, the first slide that you're going to see is going to be the staffing levels across several years of the unified government. And these staffing levels represent, we broke them down by quarters. So you will see we're starting from the left of 2021, and we've identified the staffing levels each quarter. In 2022, you see a drop in the staffing levels during that year, and then a gradual increase in 2023, a continued increase in 2024, and where we sit today in 2025. And as I read this graph here, when I look at 2022 and looking at the data that we had historically, even back in 2020, the county administrator at that time, we did some mini pauses in hiring. We really focused on what vacancies were actually happening at the unified government, and we would meet nearly every other week with the county administrator's office and the budget team to outline what separations were happening, what positions we were going to hold on, and how we were going to move forward with hiring. So that's why it looks so tight in 2022. In March of 2023 is when, at the time, the interim county administrator released over 350 positions for the organization to fill. So we were posting that many positions and we were recruiting for all of those positions. As you can see, we continued on that trajectory where our staffing levels continue to increase. As of today, we are sitting, and this is data as of June 1st, you will see we're sitting at, as of June 1st, 2,123 employees of the unified government.
So one of the things with the unified government, we have been doing, building our budgets at a trend level, at the fund level. And as Renee pointed out, in 2023, we were building at a trend level. So in 2023, we would have built 2024's budget at a trend level for 2024. And we could see like in the fourth quarter of 2023, that number spiked. So we had already built the budget and our numbers, it went up. So we can see that that growth continued on into 2024 and the levels that we had built the budget at for personnel was lower. And then it kept growing like each year over into 2025. So we can see that the levels that we have spiked at in 2025 related to personnel. So some of the things that Renee is going to talk about, how we're going to control that.
So moving to the next slide, again, data as of June 1st, we have about 87% of our positions filled today throughout all the departments in the unified government. And we currently are sitting at about 305 positions that go unfilled, which represents about a 13% vacancy rate. And that's, again, across the organization. The next slide is going to represent city UG departments, some of our larger departments that we have. And so the first is the police department, and they are sitting at 463 positions that are filled, which is about 88%. I do want to point out, when we talk about the police department, we are talking about the entire workforce of the police department. So that's going to be a combination of both sworn positions and civilian positions. And so their vacancy is sitting at 61, and that's about 11% of their staffing. The next is the fire department. They have 488 positions filled. They're sitting on 5 vacancies. So this is the one department that has always trended with less vacancies than any other department in the organization. Typically, their turnover is always a very low turnover in the fire department. So they're sitting at about a 1% vacancy rate. And then the Public Works Department is a civilian department, and they have approximately 217 members. 81% of their positions are filled with 50 vacancies throughout the different divisions of the Public Works Department. So recognizing about an 18.7% vacancy rate. And those are the larger departments for the unified government. We move on to the vacancies for the constitutional departments within the unified government. And we'll start off with the sheriff's department. The sheriff, and again, I want to preface, this is both sworn and civilian positions of the sheriff's department. And they're looking at 234 positions filled, so about 80% of his positions, with 58 vacancies, which equates to about almost a 20% vacancy rate. The district attorney's office is trending with about 64 and a half positions filled, and 9 vacancies, about 12, almost a little under 13%. And the Register of Deeds is has all of their positions filled at 100%. So we're not seeing any vacancies with the Register of Deeds. The next slide that you see here is the trend analysis of the unified government turnover rates. Again, employee turnover is the total number of employees who leave an organization over a certain period of time. And this includes both voluntary and involuntary separations from the unified government. We look to see how we are compared to the national average on turnover. And as you see there, Mercer, their workforce turnover summary right now is averaging about 13.5% for a national average for turnover. For the unified government in this trend, you will see that starting in 2020, we had about an 8.6% turnover, and this is organization-wide. Our highest year of turnover was in 2021. And then with 2022 coming down, 2023 still coming down, then we took another spike in turnover in 2024. And as we sit today, again, we're like at about a 4.31% turnover. Now, an acceptable turnover for any organization is projected to be under anywhere from 10 to 12%. So that's a healthy turnover. That is what organizations typically will experience. We have done a good job here at the unified government of trying to stay under that number or somewhere near that number. So with the exception of year 2021, we have been within the national standards of what they projected as a healthy turnover.
Shakiva Christian, HR manager. Going back to the turnover numbers, the 4.31 is just based on now or from January till now. So it is anticipated that that number will rise by the end of the year.
So this next chart is really telling the story of what we've been doing as far as hiring and the exits from the organization. So starting in 2021, you will see separations are noted in the green. The appointments, which are new hires, are going to be noted in the yellow. So in 2020, you will see that even then we were outpacing, we were hiring more people than people actually exiting the organization. In 2021, we saw a flip of, we had less new hires than people leaving. So that's typically what we kind of want to see a little bit is we need people to leave in order to hire. In 2022, again, separations were at 307, but we hired 280 people. 2023, again, we had less separations than we did hirings. 2024, we're still up there with 345 new hires opposed to 285 separations. Where we sit today, this is typically what we would want to see. We would want to see either separations and hires kind of being even or separations being a little bit higher. And there's a lot of contributing factors that can influence the decline, in employee separations. And that's kind of what we see now is that, economic situations tend to keep employees here, at their workplaces. We have benefit packages for employees that are it's a very healthy benefit package. So there's a lot of factors that go into this. We also have programs such as the Deferred Retirement Option Program, which is the DROP program with our public safety, those individuals who qualify under KPNF. Currently, we have about 31 members so far between police and fire who have signed up for the DROP program. So basically, those individuals who are eligible to retire and possibly would have retired, they actually have made a choice to stay on with the unified government longer in this program, and they elect to stay in this program for 3 to 5 years in this program. And so we are seeing that trend go up.
Renee, could you explain the DROP program for those that are listening, what that means as to the 3 to 5 years and what the criteria is involved with that? Just
Yes.
briefly, if you can.
So the DROP program is available to KPNF members who are eligible for a full retirement. And basically what that is they can keep working and receive a salary from the unified government while their retirement benefits grow into an account. And so what happens is the DROP program is supposed to be viewed as a tool for an organization to be able to project upcoming vacancies. Participants are not guaranteed employment. However, they do, again, they retire at the CAPERS level, at the KPNF level, but they continue to work for the unified government. So there are contributions that are made to the KPNF where the UG contributes to KPNF retirement, and then the employee contributes to their retirement plan under KPNF. Now their retirement plan actually goes into an account that's separate from what they were contributing to, and it builds this account where they earn interest. And so when they finally complete their years that they've signed up for a drop, either 3 to 5 years, they are eligible then to retire from the unified government and then receive their pension from CAPERS in addition to that account, that savings account that they have under the drop program.
I think it was important for the public to hear that, so there wasn't a misrepresentation of what is called double dipping by the employees, by our employees. In all fairness to them, the public should know that we've got some dedicated employees, especially in public service, that we could possibly lose, and that institutional knowledge is extremely important and necessary for our police department and fire, as well as the sheriff's department.
And I also will add to that, that is not something that's just dedicated to the unified government. This is available to any law enforcement officer or any member who's eligible under the Kansas KP&F program throughout the state of Kansas. So it's just not designated to us here in Wyandotte County.
Reginald Lindsay, Unified Government Budget Director. With this chart, I'd also like to point out, a little earlier, we talked about a slide where I mentioned the trend that the unified government was using as far as for trending personnel, and we did that at a fund level. And a fund level example, that would be like the city general fund level or the county general fund level. But what I'd like to do is point out in 2022 and 2021, we can see we had more separations in appointments. So when we were building our trend and using our trend, in cases like these, we're able to return money back to the city general fund and the county general fund. And then also the same thing in 2022 because we had more separations in appointments. But as we got to 2023 and we have more appointments and separations, it kind of got our trend off. And that's one of the reasons we're going to be moving away from our trend. We had more positions coming in than we had budgeted for. And that trend continued on into 2024. And we can see that it's running about equal now. So we didn't have positions falling off at a fast rate like we did in 2021 and 2022. And we had like multiple things going on where, again, Renee, she talked about 300 positions were released in 2023. So we had a lot of hiring that went on there. And then also, we had our new ERP system Workday that was implemented, which made it more efficient to hire people. So we definitely were bringing more people into the organization, which is a good thing, but we were budgeting at a trend. And then just really wanted to point out that we swung as far as appointments to separations, and it kind of made it the trend like a thing that we had to move away from.
Commissioner, again, Renee Ramirez, regarding the drop program, that was something that was passed. It was a House Bill 2196. So again, this was at the state level, just in case anybody needed that information.
Great, thank you. I do remember it was put into place for our highway patrol initially. And so I just wanted to ensure that the public knew that our employees were, as I stated, not doing anything that's not offered statewide to other municipalities.
You are correct. The Kansas Highway Patrol was the pilot for the drop program. So this next chart is something that you have typically seen, and it's the union grid. This is basically the grid that we utilize, so that way you can see the historical data. It illustrates, the various employee groups throughout our organization, along with the historical view of the compensation changes going back to 2014. Currently, you'll see we are actively engaged with 2 unions that we're still trying to work contracts with. We are out of contract with these 2 unions, but we're still actively negotiating with them. And that's the AFSCME union and the one of the skilled trades, which is SEIU, which are the building engineers. Here coming up in late June, early July, we will begin negotiations with 2 other unions. And that is going to be with our FOP4, which is the Police Officers Union, and then UFCW, which represents our Police Communications Department. So we will be engaging in those. We do have a current LOU in place with FOP 40, which are our sheriff's deputies. And that LOU goes through December 2025, where at that point we will start engaging with them on negotiations. One of the things that, I'd like to mention on this is that, that chart, can you go back to that chart? That chart illustrates, the number of positions that, are associated with each of those, employee groups. But the cost and the personnel cost, when we look at these things, people don't typically look at the actual personnel costs that go into what an employee's salary is. And so just in looking with all of these groups here, the total compensation, the annual compensation as of June 11th is about 168 million. And that does not include, that number does not include the obligations that the unified government has for what we have to pay for Medicare, what we pay to CAPERS, what we pay to KPNF, Social Security. When we look at all of those costs, that $168 million cost actually equates to 204 million. So those are expenses that the unified government has to pay when we come to compensation and the benefits. And that does not include the health benefits. We still have to include for our employees that have family coverage, we budget about 24,000 per employee for benefits, and we budget about 12,000 for an employee who does not have a family. So those are true expenses that the unified government faces, and those numbers represent the current workforce.
About the next 8 slides, we're going to cover the resources related to funding personnel. And what we're going to do is look at the county general fund and the city general fund. What we have is looking at a model that looks at 0% property tax growth, and then we'll have a model that looks at 3% property tax growth, and then we'll have a model that looks at 5% property tax growth, and then we'll have another model that looks at fully funding personnel and what type of revenue we would need. So we're starting out with the county general fund, revenue neutral, and we can see the years that we'll be covering are given a historical view of 2024, where we're estimating we're closing at, and then we'll look at what 2025 budget that we approved last year. Then the 2025 amended budget will be what we're forecasting at a current spend right now for 2025. And then 2026 is what we're forecasting what our budget could possibly look like for 2026. And then 2027 out to 2030 are strictly forecasts based on the assumptions below. So we see those revenue assumptions would be property tax revenue neutral in 2026, and then we'd have 4% growth in outer years. And then sales tax wise, we're looking at a 4.5% growth in 2026, then 2% growth from 2027 out to 2028, then a 4% growth from 2029 to 2030. Then other taxes would be a 3% growth from 2026 to 2030. Then on the expenditure side, for assumptions, we have personnel, which we're looking at a 3.5% increase all years. So that would grow each year as an increment on top of the next year. And then we'd have operating expenses growing at 3% increase in all years. And then for capital, in 2026 through 2027, we'd pick back up with what we funded capital at in 2024. We greatly reduced capital in 2025 in the county, as far as we pretty much wiped it out. And then we had some leases and things we had to pay, but it was wiped out in 2025. And then in 2028 to 2030, we did increase capital each year based on what we start back up in 2026. So zoning into 2025's amended budget, we can see we're forecasting to spend $61.5 million this year. That is definitely more than what we approved last year at the 57.3 million. And actually, what we approved last year ended up being lower than what we actually spent in 2024. And then as we jump over into 2025, with the spending levels that we have now, we expect our budget to, for personnel to end up being $61,500,000. So looking at the revenue coming in, we see the total revenues end up being $85 million. Then total expenditures being $87.3 million. And spending that amount of money, we have 2.2 million more dollars in expenditures going out in revenues. So that would eat into our fund balance and have us with a fund balance of $4.9 million and not the expected fund balance that we were expecting when we approved the budget last year, $8.9 million. Then as we move over into 2026, we have that same, the revenue does fall a little bit, and that's because we have some revenues that are going down as far as we had some transfers that were done in 2025, so our revenues won't be as high. And then we do have the expenditures, with everything staying stable, the personnel is definitely going up. It's $63 million. So we would be eating into our fund balance about $9 million. And we would definitely have to solve for this deficit because we would be in the hole about $4.3 million and wouldn't be able to approve a budget if we didn't make adjustments. And then just going out to 2027, we can see we start to eat into our fund balance even more, where we don't even have a fund balance going out into the future years. So we can see up here also that personnel is 68% of the costs of the county general fund, and all the other costs equate to being 32%. So this particular model looks at personnel costs for the county general fund with a 3% increase. And that 3% increase happens here at $85 million. It does end up stabilizing as far as we're looking at the revenue neutral. We had lower revenue coming in for the year. So we do have like $85 million coming in, and expenses ended up being $93 million, and we still have the same amount for personnel at $63 million for personnel that we had in the model before. And we do eat into fund balance by $7.6 million because we end up having a deficit where we have $7.6 million more dollars of expenditures going out than revenues we have going in. We still wouldn't be able to approve a budget because fund balance would be a negative $2.7 million. It isn't as low as the other model we were looking at with 0% growth. And this model assumes all the other assumptions that we had in the prior model. So this is our model where we're looking at personnel for the county general fund with a 5% increase. In here, you can see our revenue does jump up over 2025 at about $2 million. And we do still have the same $93 million that we would be spending. And then we would be eating into the fund balance about $6.5 million. And our deficit would be that $6.5 million because we have $6.5 million more in expenses going out than revenues. And if no adjustments are made, we would definitely have to make some adjustments. We couldn't approve a budget. And we can see even with this 5% increase that for the county general fund, the picture does not look good going out into the future. So we definitely are going to have to make some structural changes here within the county general fund. And some of the things that are contributing to this is just some of the personnel costs that are growing from year to year. So for instance, since 2022, we've had like a 20% increase in personnel costs in the county general fund. This particular model looks at if we were to fund personnel at 100% and also include revenues that could help us fund that. So we'd see we'd have to bring revenues up to $93 million. And that would put us in the positive. So we'd be looking at like a 17% growth in property tax revenues if we were to fully fund personnel on the county general side. So now we're going to switch to the city general fund forecast. And here, again, we're looking at the same, we're looking at 2024, where we're estimating what the spending will finally be, 2025's budget that we approved last summer that we're utilizing right now. And then the amended budget is the 2025, what we're forecasting our spending to be for 2025. And then 2026 is right now, if we're planning on approving a budget, like what our spending would be at. And then 2027 and out to 2030 is forecast just building on those expenditures and revenues. So we can see our revenue assumptions in 2026. This particular model is a revenue neutral model, 4% growth in the outer years. You know, this one thing to keep in mind is we could be being aggressive with the 4% growth because this year we definitely had 5% growth and it fell from like the 11% that we had last year. So if it was the fall, we may be at where we would be getting any new property tax revenue. So the 4% could be kind of risky. And then sales tax, we're looking at a 6% growth in 2026, a 2% growth from 2027 out to 2028, and then a 4% growth from 2029 out to 2030. And so one thing that's different with the city general fund is that it has a more diverse portfolio of revenue coming in, as far as like it has more sales tax and charges for services, as opposed to over in the county general fund, it's mostly, the revenues are mostly made up of property taxes. And then also in this revenue model, we're assuming that the pilot is flat. And then other taxes would come in at 3% from 2026 to 2030. And our expenditure assumptions, again, personnel, the same as in the county general fund model, 3.5% increase in all years. And operating expenses would be 3% increase in all years. And then we would reinstate capital in 2026 at the levels that we had it funded at in 2024. And then each year after 2026, from 27 to 2030, we'd have a 3% incremental increase. So zoning in on 2025's amended budget and looking at personnel, when we approved the budget last year, we originally had planned to spend $133 million. Right now, what we're trending at, $138 million. And that is going to grow into the 2026. We're expecting to $143 million. So if you look at the 2026 budget, revenues are coming in about $176 million, about $5 million more. But our expenditures did go up with mostly personnel at $183 million. And so we'd have a deficit of $7 million. And we'd have a cash ending fund balance of $24 million. And our fund balance would go down to 13%. And one of the things we're trying to keep our fund balance up around 25%, that's what our policy says. And then as we go out into the future years at 2027, we can see that we are still spending more as far as expenditures going out the door than revenue coming in. So Each year it continues to increase as far as the expenditures going out. And a big lever of this is personnel is just the biggest piece of the budget. We can see up at the top with the pie chart. Personnel is 78% of the city general fund, and all other costs are 22%. This particular model for the city general fund is looking at a 3% revenue growth for property tax. And we see the forecast is at 177 million, where the other one was at 176 million. We did pull in a little bit more revenues. Personnel expenditures end up staying the same, where we have $6 million more in expenditures going out the door than revenue coming in. So we would be eating into the fund balance by that amount also, which would drop our fund balance down to $25 million and have us at 13 million or 13% for our fund balance, where again, we would like to stay at 25%. And again, the major difference in this model is that it is at a 3% growth in 2026. And as we can see, as we get out into the outer years, once we get to 2029, we wouldn't be able to approve a budget with if we kept spending at this amount. But one of the things that we always do is we make sure that we balance the budget. So we would be solving each year to make sure that this red is not out here. But at our current spending level, this is where we would be. Everything pretty much stays the same in this model, so we have the 5% growth for property tax in 2026, where we are jumping up to $178 million in revenue coming in. We're still staying static at the $183 million that we're forecasting for expenditures, and the personnel ends up being $143 million. And so this has us still eating into fund balance at $5.3 million. And as we go out into the future, we can see we still are in the red. So the big picture here is that personnel is the big lever of the city general fund and the county general fund. And there has to be adjustments here to get to both of these budgets in the balance. And here's a view of the city general fund. If we were to adjust revenues to fully fund personnel, so the fully fund personnel, we would need 21% growth in property taxes. And that would get us up to $184 million. We'd have a $294,000 more of revenues coming in and expenditures going out. We'd be at a fund balance of 17%. And we don't see any red as far as like fund balances out into the future, but there are some structural imbalances that we would have to straighten out into the future. This slide, it provides us it's a summary of the 4 different models that we went through. So we can see the top here, the county general fund with 0% revenue growth from property tax. We have $84 million that would come in. Then next year we'd have 85 million, or the next percentage is 85 million that would come in, and 5% be 87 million, and then 17% be 93 million. And we kind of, the expenses stay pretty static, not changing those a whole lot on the county general side, but we just kind of see what the difference of the net changes are as we add revenue into the picture. And the way we'd like this commission just to kind of give you an idea of where we are with personnel and where we are with the revenues coming in and kind of show you the difference and give you a summary of the net change in the county general fund here. And then also down here in the city general fund, also give you a view of what the net change would look like, looking at different scenarios of how much revenue we would take in. So we see spending at the current balance. If we wanted a balanced budget, we'd have to um, like increase the property tax revenues by 21%. But if we chose to go with 0% revenue growth, we would need to solve for a $7 million deficit in the city general fund. And then same thing with the county general fund. If we were going to go to 0% fund balance or 0% property tax growth, we would need to solve for $9.3 million.
Thank you, Reginald. So moving to the action steps being implemented now, the following measures have been enacted to support organizational alignment and fiscal responsibility. So our teams have been working with the county administrator, who has implemented a 90-day hiring pause that was in effect until starting May 21st of 2025. During this period of time, when the county administrator implemented the hiring pause, I do want to say that we have had individuals who we had to push through the conditional offer stage because they were already in a stage ready to be hired. So we had several individuals and departments who had already been doing their due diligence in filling their vacancies. So the administrator's office pushed through some of those positions. As soon as, this pause was announced. We have removed about 32 postings from the WICO website for recruitment purposes. The HR and budget teams are meeting with every department to review their position inventories and their personnel budgets. And I will say, these meetings have been going very well. Our directors they have been working well with us in offering up different ways that we can have cost savings. We've had departments actually say they are willing to give up an FTE to another department who is in need of an FTE. We've had some departments actually give up positions and say, if I could reclassify this vacancy and recruit for a certain position because we got a new software, they've been willing to do that as well. So I think that is, that's a tremendous ask to ask department heads to do, but they have been coming to the table recognizing the challenges that we're facing with personnel costs. Our target for the position inventory is for us to match the 2024 staffing levels, where some departments won't be able to hire, some departments would be able to. And then another thing we need to review is we need to review those sign-on bonuses that we were offering out when we were having the challenges of individuals applying for our positions. We've had referral bonuses, retention bonuses. These are all real costs that we need to reevaluate to see if it's still necessary to continue with those types of things. We recognize that this is a substantial amount of information to absorb regarding staffing. And historically, our budget process has primarily focused on just two areas, which is the operations budget and the capital budgets, with personnel considerations really only being limited to if you need a new position and we would go through a new position request. However, it is imperative that we shift our approach to include a more comprehensive review of personnel. So one of the things that our teams have worked together with and are recognizing that not only when we go through a budget process for operations and for capital, but we also now need to include a third component of that, and that is the human capital piece of that. And the human capital component has to still go through the same scrutiny that the other portions of the budget go through.
Commissioner Kane, you have a question?
I have a question, I have a comment. In 20 years, I've never seen anybody come up and recommend that we reduce or lay off 80 positions when you just said a little while ago, we have 305 open jobs now. And I'm disappointed to the point where I'm pissed because I don't think this is right. You know, we need to do a budget that adds people. The public works people are 50 people down now, and then you're talking about another 80 people. And I've been on the short end of these getting laid off stuff, indefinitely laid off. So I know how it feels as an employee when people say, well, we're only going to lay off 80 people. That's not fair to the worker bees that are in here. And if you want to lay off 80 management folks, I'm all about it. But this isn't the way to do a budget where you guys come in here and give us gloom and doom, and goddamn, here we are, 80 positions. And we're sitting there and you say like we're going to smoke a cigarette or something. I don't agree with this. This is wrong. You guys need to tell us whether revenue neutral is what we need to do or whether we need to go ahead and go back the way it was. And administrator, you got to tell us, did revenue neutral work or not? And what is your recommendation to get out of the hole that we're in? I cannot believe that you guys came up and did that. And I thought I saw it the other day, and then I'm reading it here. And like, well, as long as it's not you, it's okay. But for the worker bee, because what we're doing now, and a lot of you guys got extra work on your table because you're shorthanded as it is in every level. We need to get to a staffing level where it's equal for all the employees, top to bottom. You know, when you think about that, we're 61 short on police, and we're talking about a freeze. We need a budget that says, we don't want to do this. Here's what we need to do. Here's what our recommendation is, and make a decision. Because we have to think about those 80 people that you folks are talking about. And unless you've been in that position, you don't know what it's like. In short order now, you run out of unemployment pretty damn quick. These are things that we have to think about their families. And like I said, in 20 years, I've never seen bullshit like this before.
Please continue.
Again, these are items for consideration. We are recommending that we continue with the hiring pause through the end of 2025. We need to evaluate every separation for payouts and identify payout dates. This is a strategy that we utilized many years ago, where if a separation occurred, we did a calculation and the departments were unable to fill those positions until it got closer to that payout date. Again, with the economics that are being presented, a hold on the cost of living adjustments for, the COLAs for non-union employees in 2026. I don't have anything up there for the unions because contractually, we are not able to do a clawback on those salaries. And I'll defer to legal on why we can't do that. There is case law out there that lays out why we can't do that on contractual obligations. We will continue to move forward with identifying vacant positions to eliminate or to freeze. And again, if we continue on the hiring trend that we are doing, we're not saying that we are going to do a reduction in force, but if we don't change the way that we are looking at the personnel cost, it could lead us to a reduction in force.
Mr. Administrator. Oh, Mr. Kane.
I don't think we should have a cost of living freeze for anybody. We're not keeping up with the cost of living as it is. So if I were you guys, I'd want you to fight to keep your cost of living. We're already in the hole as it is. We're not keeping up cost of living as it is. And you guys should tell the administrator, we don't like it. He may not like it. But I don't want you guys to lose either. I don't want any of our employees to lose. So just tell us what we need to do to get over the hump from this, please.
Commissioner, again, our first strategy is, we want to preserve the current workforce. We value our employees. And we will always look at vacant positions and eliminating vacant positions. But I think in order for us to do this, we have to do the right workforce planning, working with departments, making sure that our departments are right-sized. If that means that we have to upskill certain individuals or reskill individuals, those are things that we have to look at, because we have to make sure that whatever our staffing levels ultimately end up with, that we are able to provide a level of service to our community that we say we're going to do. And I don't disagree with you at all. Having to say some of these things up here, it pains me because non-union employees have always been the employees who, no one represents the non-union employees. The bargaining units have their representation. Well, I stand here today. I don't agree with having to not give the non-union their COLAs in 2026, but I have to offer up options. These are just options for consideration. I will always look at vacancies first and go for the vacancies. I will always do that. A reduction in force is not something that any organization wants to look at. That is the last resort, but there are behavioral changes that we have to make as an organization. And we have to recognize the true cost of what it is to employ an employee. And that's just not at the unified government. That is what every employer has to consider. So again, these are considerations, and I will tell you that I know that my team, along with the budget team in the county administrator's office, these are hard conversations and hard things to discuss. And it pains me to say some of these things, but these are the reality. But I will go on record. Do I ever want to not give non-union employees their cost of living? The answer to that is no, because I would never. We have the same expenses that every union employee has. We are no different than any union employee that works for this organization. Many of us are in support roles that support public safety. We are valued. We are just as important as public safety.
Commissioner Kane, if I may, this is David Johnston, County Administrator. We're here talking about personnel because most of the time when we talk about having to make tough choices in the budget, as Renee mentioned early on in her presentation, we normally take a look at the other portions of our budget, which is other operational costs and the capital cost. Most of the time we wind up making cuts to those areas, and we then find ourselves in deferred maintenance. We've heard our public complain about our streets, our conditions of our streets. We've heard from our fire department of the conditions of many of our fire stations. We've heard over time of the condition of our police cars and some of our fire equipment because we've made decisions about deferring replacements. And sometimes we then have to deal with making tough choices. We have to then defer other decisions to make decisions about the deferred decisions on those. And eventually those come to roost. When we look at the data that we presented earlier to you, and it became more and more apparent over the last budget process, and then the post-revenue budget data that we started looking at in earnest starting in after the first quarter data that we received in April, we had to take a look at personnel as the third major component of our budget. We made a decision last year that when it came time to deal with a revenue neutral budget, when we looked at our capital budget, we took a look at our operating budget and we made cuts. When we took a look at our personnel budget, we said we were going to avoid layoffs. We were going to make sure that we honored our contractual obligations with our union contracts. And for our non-union wages, we were going to be equivalent in raises with our non-union employees. We felt like all our employees deserved to have a raise. And you honored that in passing the non-union, the revenue neutral budget. But as we started looking at the budgets, we still heard about the need for capital improvements. We still heard about the need to improve our operation budgets from our departments. And when we started putting those numbers in our budget models, we started seeing the demand for increased budgets. We heard from our public at our public meetings that they wanted certain improved services. And when we started looking at that, it's like, oh my God, got to come up with a lot of cash. How do we do that? Well, when we looked with working with our appraiser, said, well, you know, you're only going to be able to have a certain amount of increased appraised value to your property tax bill. It wasn't going to be the double-digit increases that we had for 3 straight years a few years ago. So it wasn't going to be that much if we decide to go that route. What do we do? It said then we had to take a hard look at our largest component of our budget, which we decided we weren't going to take a large look at for a number of years. All right, let's take a look at it. You have to. Organizations eventually have to take a look at the personnel side of the budget. No one likes to do that, but in all fairness, you have to take a look at it. And that's what we decided to do and take a look at it. These are just telling you we are looking at it. In all fairness, we have to look at it. Some of these things may be in our recommended budget. Some of these things may not make it in our but we're telling you at this point in time in the budget process, we're looking at it. Because we've heard from many people, we want more improved services in the streets. We want better places for our fire and our police departments. We want better services for our elderly. We want this, we want that, we want this, we want that. But I can tell you, we're not getting more revenue to cover all that. We had public at our last open public session that said, we have a revenue problem in our government. You're not generating more revenue to cover the demands that we are demanding my government to provide us. I have an economic development director that is challenged to go and try to get more revenue generating businesses into this. Many times I have citizens that are lobbying you to keep those businesses out of here because they don't like it. I'm being frank with you. But that's what a county administrator does, to tell what they hear. But that brings revenue in to help us meet the demands from the public. Without always trying to squeeze blood from a turnip. By squeezing blood from a turnip, means I have to get that revenue by reducing services to the public. Then I hear, I don't want those services cut. That's where we're at right now. So, yeah, I'll take the criticism that I'm looking at it, but you should also applaud the staff that we're looking at it, because it is the largest part of our budget. That doesn't mean we're insensitive. I think it's being we're responsible. But we're taking a look at it.
Hey, Troy, do me a favor, stand up for a second. I've been pounding this guy when he was the temporary guy. What I call you 3 or 4 times a week? You got to think about it. And there's a lot of stuff that we can, and he's doing a great job I would love to see more of what he's doing. But they're working with the thread. And we're not doing justice to our constituents. You know, I got a road that's in so bad a shape, it's unbelievable. And we're going to do a super patch on it, I guess. But that's what's sad. We put ourselves in this position. How do we get out of it? And take care of all our employees. You know, folks, I've negotiated more contracts than you shake a stick at. But each time the union got something, the salary folks got something. And when I got here, that's one of the first things I talked about is everyone should get the same thing. I still feel that way. But Mr. Administrator, sir, I don't like it. I think we need to go back and look at something that's more palatable and tell us that here's what we got to do, whatever it is. I don't care what it is, but just come back and say, here's what we got to do. Because all this does is piss me off because it's all gloom and doom. I want to hear what it's going to take to get back to where we were a couple of years ago and move forward. That's it. It's pretty simple. And do I get excited? Hell yeah. Because I've been one of those folks that got laid off. And you go home and tell your wife and 2 kids, because that's what I had to do. I'm indefinitely laid off. Unemployment runs out in 16 weeks. And then you gotta go look for a job, but you want to come back. I mean, I'm fighting for all of you folks at all levels. And I'm glad I'm not doing the negotiating thing because you guys wouldn't like the way I talk when I do it.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Thank you, staff, for this presentation. I've been keeping up with a lot of the kind of budget conversation, and I know Commissioner Townsend's online, but one of the things that we said is probably 1, 2 a.m. before we voted on revenue neutral was, we're going to do this, but it's going to hurt. And we're almost a year to the day of for me, it was a reluctant vote, knowing that on paper, politically, it might be attractive to say, yes, we went revenue neutral. But the impact of that is very, very difficult to justify. Does anyone know, just within the Kansas City Metro, how many other cities went revenue neutral? Because this is a really good idea. About 1 or 2 across the state. So kind of smaller municipalities. I know when Senator Tyson was here and kind of, I guess, one of the architects of revenue neutral, she even said, hey, the expectation isn't that cities or municipalities would do this every year, that it would be kind of a reset. We know Bonner Springs and Edwardsville did not go revenue neutral. So we don't even have our peers. And I think there's legitimate reasons as to why. The question just becomes politically, why it was so attractive to begin with to say this is a possible solution. And now we are dealing with the impact because we simply do not have enough of other forms of revenue to support the current services that we have, let alone increase the amount of services that our community is asking for. So I just have some list of questions. Hopefully it'll kind of land us of where we are going. Can we go revenue neutral and maintain our current commitments to labor that we all have voted on? Can someone give me an answer?
We would definitely have to make some adjustments with expenses.
So is that a yes or a no? I need
Without making adjustments, we would not be able to.
So meaning if we were to say, we're going to provide the same level of services, right, that we did 2025 for 2026, we also, can we go to the labor slide real quick? I think we should go ahead and show folks what we're talking about here, because we're a pro-labor commission. Okay. So looking at this, I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. Right now, if we were to say, hey, we went ahead, we voted on those contracts, we said we want to give you the raise to see 3%, some 3%, 4%. We cannot afford that without making cuts. I just want to make sure I have that correct.
And I know you wanted to see that slide, but this slide right here pretty much kind of shows like if 0% is the going revenue neutral. So county general fund, if we had the $84 million in revenues coming in and $93 million in expenditures going out, to have a balanced budget, we would need to cut $9.3 million. The city general fund, going 0% revenue growth for property tax, we'd have $176 million in revenues coming in, expenses going out $183 million.
And then the seven million that goes out. Okay, I just want to make sure. So as of right now, we have voted on these contracts. Okay, I just want to make that there's no one, nothing that's happening under the table here. These are publicly voted on contracts that we've agreed. We've said we're going to stand by labor. We're going to stand by our employees. We're going to make sure, even though those raises aren't even in line with inflation to begin with, but we said we're going to try to be good partners, right? Employee morale is important. We can't provide those services without having people. We cannot afford to do that if we go revenue neutral. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that. Okay. If we, will we have savings or reserves, which impacts our credit rating, it impacts our ability to borrow, if we go revenue neutral for the county and for the city? It's my question.
So I'll let Debbie Johnson, she definitely can talk about like with the credit ratings agencies, because they definitely.
Well, let's just start with our reserves first. If we go revenue neutral again, what do our reserves look like at the county level? And I know we have a slide there. Just want to emphasize this.
Right. Debbie Johnson, your Deputy Chief Financial Officer. If we go revenue neutral on the county side, you're looking at, do you have that one slide up? Let's see.
Yeah, right now we're looking at the city.
For 2026, we wouldn't be able to approve a budget because we're showing our cash balance would be negative by 4.3 million. So no, we would not be, we would have to make cuts on the expense side to go revenue neutral. The county budget is funded by 62% property tax revenues. So it's not nearly as diversified as the city general fund. So
Understood. Not to cut you off, but I know my colleagues have other things they want to add to the conversation. So I just want to make sure, because we're talking about that 2026 forecast column, correct?
yes.
And under that column, just for the public to be aware, we're really looking at the cash basis ending funding balance. If you go kind of, down, right, 2026 forecast and then over, we're about $4.3 million in the hole. That's not us being irresponsible. That's not us being careless with the dollars. That's us just trying to keep the lights on and us trying to ensure that our employees, their families, the services that our folks really, really value is being taken care of. And so right now it would be just we wouldn't be able to do it. We would have to cut further into the hole. So for the county, revenue neutral would be very, very, very difficult for us to do. I do want to ask about vacancies. So maybe my memory is not clear here. I thought we had frozen positions and got rid of vacancies in last year's budget to get some savings. And so can we just, I'm trying to reconcile what we did last year and what we've been doing in previous years, and then this current conversation on all of these kind of open positions that are currently frozen.
So since 2023, we have been freezing positions and getting rid of positions as we go through the position inventory. But one of the things that we were doing, we were building our budgets at a trend level. And as some of the slides we showed earlier are when we built the budgets, and I'll just go back to one of the slides.
Yes, please do.
So when for instance, for 2024's budget, we were trending, we built the budget in the summer of 2023, and we used this trend to build that budget. So we can see where the hiring like picked up. So that really kind of threw our trend for a loop. And so we ended up hiring more people, and so we were really cutting it close on personnel. And that continues into this year, and it definitely going into from 2022 to 2023, where we ended up having 300 positions released. It definitely impacted our trend.
So let me ask this on the vacancies piece. Did we hold those vacancies from last year to this year? Did they carry over?
So we did end up filling some vacancies.
So we put the positions back in the budget.
So not any positions that we deleted or froze, but we did have positions that had not been frozen yet that we did end up hiring for.
Gotcha.
What we did in the last 2 years is we eliminated positions that were over 2 years vacant that were in every department. For some reason, we allowed departments to have those in their inventory, and we eliminated those. So we kept those that were 1 year, up to 1 year vacant. And those are the ones that you were seeing being filled.
Gotcha. And so the current vacancy conversation right now are not vacancies that are more than 2 years old. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure because I do remember us having that conversation. Thank you. I'm almost done, Mayor Pro Tem. So we put a lot of scenarios on screen. Obviously, for the items to consider, a lot of those are very dire and pretty devastating for our community, and wouldn't solve a lot of problems, quite frankly. If we were to find a happy medium, meaning we do not accept all of the property taxes increase this year, but we also don't go revenue neutral, and we are preventing some of these dire HR situations that was described, what would be the ideal budget scenario? Is it 3%, 5%? Is it we have to fully accept all of the property tax revenue increase? What would that be for the county and city to get us to where you all do not have to make those hard decisions?
So with getting to 5% additional property tax on both ends, on the city and the county, we're still going to have to make some reductions and adjust the budget. So we can see with the 5% on the county general side, we're going to have to make $6.5 million worth of reductions. And then on the city general side, we're going to have to make about $5.3 million. So internally, we definitely are looking to make some adjustments on expenditures.
Yeah, so it jumps from 5% to 17% county, 5%, 21% city, and then I see kind of the net change. Are you all basically saying within your analysis, there's no way for us to keep the lights on, meaning We don't necessarily have to eliminate these positions and make these dire decisions without accepting the full increase in property taxes for the city and county?
We're still gonna have to make some adjustments if we accept the 5%.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the 17 and the 21%.
So, I mean, we could keep the government going as it is right now with the 21% and the 17%.
We did
That
those last two scenarios, a 17 to 21% for a structurally balanced budget. That is, money coming in equals the expenses you need, so it's a 0-0 thing. So and we realize that that's unrealistic. So, because we're not going to tell the public, we're going to get.
So we do not have a 17% increase in property taxes for the county.
It's not going to happen.
We do not have a 21% increase for this. So what if we were to accept the full amount in property tax increase, what would it be? It would be 5%?
5%.
Okay. Please note that somewhere because it was very hard to denote what the true dollars are and what we actually have and then what is hypothetical just within the analysis. To one question and then one last thing I'll say, when are we voting on revenue neutral? When is that vote taking place? We have until the 17th?
10th.
Okay, I heard 17th and 10th. Where are we at? Clerk, does anybody have anything?
July 10th.
July 10th is when we are voting. Okay, so July 10th is when we are voting on revenue neutral. Okay, thank y'all so much. This has been, I think we've cleared up some things. Last thing I would say, we need folks to show up July 10th. And I appreciate the folks that are in this room 5 o'clock, but July 10th, we need folks to show up and we need folks to speak out because to hear one side of the table of property taxes, which I am empathetic towards, but to not hear the other the same night and only get text messages and emails and everything, we need people there so that we can have a balanced conversation on what the impact of going revenue neutral will be for our community. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Michael Peterson, he wanted to add something to the conversation.
So Michael Peterson, Deputy Budget Director. I just wanted to point out, when we're going through these scenarios and you see the slide with the 300 vacant positions, so the scenarios that you have in front of you are currently filled positions. So we are not anticipating filling those 300 positions in these scenarios. So last year when we did the budget, we budgeted about 93% of our city general fund positions, and we budgeted about 85% of our county general fund positions. So so again, just going back to the slide with the charts, which is pretty early on, I did try to write some numbers down, but last year when we did the amended budget, we had to add money to personnel. This slide. So last year when we did the budget, or in 2023 when we did the budget, we assumed that we were going to have about 2,000 staff working for the UG. When we did the amended budget, we had about 2,080. So that's when we changed the amended budget to a higher level of personnel. When we did the 25 budget, we assumed that we were going to have 2,080 people working at the UG. Currently, we have roughly 2,125. So that's where we're showing the jump in expenses on the personnel side. That does not include filling all of the 305 open positions that we currently have. That's one of the things that we're working with departments to do, is try to narrow down that open position count.
Commissioner Kane?
Are we going to have a budget before July 10th that is balanced and without the 80 reductions? I mean, you guys going to show us something that says, here we are, this is the best and final? Because what I'm looking at doesn't look like it to me, it's the best and final. You know, I think we need to go back and say, all right, you can do this, or we can do that. But if you do this, we're going to be in trouble. So what's going to move us forward to prevent any layoffs, getting the COLAs, and still be balanced? What's that going to take?
So right now, our proposed budget that County Administrator Johnson is going to present is going to happen on Thursday, August the 7th.
Say that again?
County Administrator Johnson will present his proposed budget on Thursday, August the 7th.
Okay. I would rather see the real deal than go through all this. And if I didn't care about you people, I wouldn't get excited. But I'd rather see it as fast as possible instead of going, well, if we do this, this is going to happen. And we can't do the public works. We can't fill the police. We can't fill the sheriff's job. But somebody's got to show me something before then about the direction we're going. You know, Mr. Administrator, if that's you, that's fine. But I want to know what you're thinking before you show it to the commission, and I want you to show it to me the first chance you get, please.
Commissioner Debbie Johnsher, Deputy CFO, I think one thing we can show you, the decision for revenue neutral, to make that decision is because we have to notify the clerk by July 20th, whether you're exceeding revenue neutral or you're not exceeding. If you don't make the decision to exceed revenue neutral, then you automatically go revenue neutral. That decision, just kind of to refresh your memory, the decision to exceed revenue neutral at that point does not mean that you can't make the decision to go revenue neutral or reduce the budget, reduce the mill levy at some point before we approve the final budget. This is the decision that we have to notify the clerk whether we are going revenue neutral or we are exceeding revenue neutral.
Commissioner, I understand what you're asking. That August 7th is the latest that I have to present to you my budget recommendation. We'll do my best to get it to you earlier.
Commissioner Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. First and foremost, I want to thank all the employees that are out there and all the 2,100 employees in the unified government. Your work does not go unnoticed, and I deeply appreciate it. In my prior position across the street, I supervised about 165 employees for 32 years. I know the pains of going through budget and especially personnel. There was one time, and obviously we were paid by the state. There was one time we didn't even get a 1% raise for 8 straight years. And we had employees leaving left and right. And that's what I'm afraid something like this is going to happen. Now, we just voted for the fire department and the Teamsters part of the sheriff's area for raises, and I know you're working on others. How in the heck can we tell non-union employees that you can't get it, but everybody else is going to get whatever? And it was 3% for the fire. And I'm glad that it's over with and we need to move on. So I am very pro-employee. I know what it takes. I know the hardships. You try working for 16 district court judges with their personalities, and I did work for over 165 in the 32 years I was there. So I know what personnel issues are and what they can be. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not ready for revenue neutral again. And I don't know why we have to wait very long. As I think, in my own opinion, we could help the administrator and the budget staff if we voted on it tonight, and depending on how it would go, then it would be over with and they would know what they're working with and could expedite a lot of stuff. And I think it would just be fair. I don't know when I make my motion if it's going to go or not, but as soon as we're through speaking, The rest of the stuff in here is good. I've read it before. I read all the stuff. I think we need to move on. And it's not fair to the employees to have to sit here for hours for that. So as far as that goes, that's my opinion, and I'm going to stick with it.
Commissioner Townsend, you've been patient.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Townsend, District 1. Commissioner Davis got to some of the heart of the questions I was going to ask, but a few more comments. We had the first of two required public opportunities. I think that was June 5th for the public to weigh in about the budget and what their concerns, thoughts were. And I was keeping track of who said what. There were about 21 speakers. 17 of them spoke about services. Only 2 specifically said remain revenue neutral. And there were 2 other persons who didn't speak about either one of those things. So that was just kind of interesting for me to see this year, while people are living revenue neutral, what that means compared to last year when we had these public engagements and almost 100% of everyone who spoke was revenue neutral. The other thing about it, I know personally, my taxes did not go down because we went revenue neutral. So we had to keep in mind what the expectation was of going revenue neutral, and did we really even achieve that? I appreciate this presentation, its entirety. I could read this. I wouldn't be able to decipher it fully without what we're doing right now. So I don't want to see us rush through this with the expertise of those people in the room who are making the presentation. So I'd like to hear this to the end. I would call a point of order on the way our staff was talked to. There's no point to use profanity with them, even though we may not like or understand what we're hearing. And we're all passionate about it, but we need to show respect to what they've had to tell us. And for them to come and say, hey, do this, that's not really their job. That's our job, but they need to tell us so we can make that decision. I find that helpful. So I appreciate what staff is saying, even though we may not like it, but we need to hear where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend. There's no other comments, any other questions? We'll move to the second part of the program. Mr. Administrator, any comments before we go there?
No, Reggie, I believe your staff is prepared to talk about community input.
Mike Grimm, our research manager, and Adrian Olimafor, our senior analyst within the budget office. They're going to talk about community input tonight. Mike Grimm is going to cover our community survey. And then Adrian, she's going to cover our community input session from last week, and then also the dot talks that we had.
Alrighty, thank you. Mike Grimm, Unified Government Research Manager. So as you recall, on May 1st, Ryan Murray with ETC Institute presented the findings of the community survey. So this evening, we're going to present some more information, a little bit more on the focus on services and programs, and I'll say areas of opportunity for the government to consider. So overall, the purpose of the survey was to objectively assess satisfaction and importance of delivering services to the citizens of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. Methodology, we historically had a biennial every other year survey. Switch to an annual, get a little more, quicker feedback. Administered by phone, mail, and online. So we had 1,260 responses. 631 of those came from the city and 629 from the county. What I mean by that, previously we had one 8-page survey, and that's a pretty long survey for folks to complete. So we split per ETC's recommendation, split the survey into a city and a county, and each household only received one survey if they were selected to complete the survey. I will note, you see some of that information on the bottom two bullets or three on the confidence level and margin of error, the plus and minus 2.8. This type of survey where we randomly select households and each household has an equal chance of getting the survey. Another way to think about that is we're 95% sure that if we surveyed everyone in the county, every household, plus or minus 3%, that the results that you will see would be what everyone in the county wants to see. I'm going to start with community image perceptions. Generally on these graphs, the blue is satisfied or very satisfied. The gray is neutral. Respondents generally saying, hey, this is okay. And then the red, kind of, the dissatisfaction. And again, we're going to focus on the red and just thinking about that in terms of an opportunity, to improve services. So just overall, if we look at this on the bottom, 73% of respondents indicated that just overall in general, the value of their tax dollars, they're just not real happy with it right now. And then secondly, physical appearance of the county, where nearly 2/3 of the folks indicated that item. If we look at the trend of some of those perceptions, we go back a few surveys, but I will point out, again, not to be negative, just kind of where we want to think about this evening is the largest decreases from the 22 to 25 survey was in the overall quality of life in Wyandotte County, decreased 11%. And then the overall appearance of the county decreased 8%. And there's some positive. We see the overall feeling of safety in Wyandotte County increased a little bit, but I'll say holding steady. So there's 4 major categories: city services, public safety, property maintenance, and parks and recreation we want to focus on this evening. And these areas focus on satisfaction, asking residents who got the survey how satisfied they were with various services, and then also what was most important to them. So in this first area, city services, again, we do see, quite a bit of, I'll say, blue up top, the public safety services, but looking for those areas of opportunity. Largest levels of dissatisfaction were maintenance of city streets, where 65% indicated they were dissatisfied, followed with property maintenance, and that's kind of a general catch-all, and we'll kind of drill into that a little bit later, and then economic development. So what the survey did with those items, they asked then the respondent, hey, can you go ahead and just rank the kind of the top 4 that should receive the most emphasis over the next 2 years? And then we see maintenance of city streets, 75% said, hey, that really needs to be the government's focus for us, followed by economic development, and then property maintenance, code enforcement. Second area, public safety. Again, overall, the dissatisfaction's not, I'll say, great, but looking for areas to possibly improve. Largest level of dissatisfaction was availability to vaccine, spay, neuter your pets, 38%. Enforcing animal codes and police visibility in neighborhoods. Now, when respondents were, I'll say, forced a little bit to say, hey, give us your top 3 priorities of what should receive the most emphasis over the next 2 years, and we see kind of that police visibility in neighborhoods, 53%, then that third bullet, police visibility in commercial areas, 27%, and then that availability to vaccine, spay, and neuter pets. Third area, property maintenance. 50% indicated that they're pretty dissatisfied with the level of cleanup, junk, trash, debris, followed by mowing and trimming on vacant lots. 43% indicated some level of dissatisfaction in inoperable or junk cars. Of those asking respondents what should receive the top priorities, it's the cleanup of junk, trash, and debris, 65%, mowing and trimming, 45%, and maintenance of homes. So just an overall general, image of the county and getting things looking nice. Last area, Parks and Rec, and we do see, a lot of satisfaction, blue on this, access to local parks up top, Wyandotte County Museum at a high level of satisfaction. But again, looking for those areas of opportunity. Quality of facilities, 33% indicated they were dissatisfied and there could be improvements made. Adult recreation programs and senior programs now, we'll see that switch up when we asked respondents, hey, give us really what you think should receive the most emphasis over the next 2 years. And it's the quality of facilities, and these could be shelters, restroom, playgrounds, for example. Maintenance of parks in general, 52%, and walking trails, 32%, and that could be more or improving what we have. So of all those areas, the city services, public safety, property maintenance, parks and rec, what ETC does is and you see that in the right-hand column, an important satisfaction rating. They have a formula they use, kind of a weighting of taking into consideration, what's most important and how satisfied are folks. Grouped them into the top 5, second 5, and you see the 2 on the bottom. But so you can see number 1, maintenance of city streets. So we have 13% satisfaction level, which is fairly low, but 75% of the folks said that's really important to them. So just mentioning the top 5, and then number 2, enforcing the cleanup of junk, trash, debris, economic development, 4, enforcing the mowing and trimming of weeds, and then 5, quality of parks. And you can just see the rest there. Chris Tatham, the president of, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. As far as the third one, economic development, did you say earlier that we could dive into that a little deeper? Or was that on another topic item? Because it just begs the question, what do they mean?
Yeah, I hope I didn't say it on that one. This was the first time that we asked economic development, and that could be 2 things. I know maybe my opinion, the governing body's been talking about growing, expanding the tax base for economic development. So the respondents could have been hearing that, and that could be the response, or they just want that store they like next to them. So we're not quite sure.
Okay.
So, and I will say in general, this survey, some will say, these are so general. What do we do with these? I mean, some are pretty specific, and we can drill down if needed. If there's some programming set up, we can look at get line item data. We can look at various areas of the county, commission district, for example, or more detailed. But sometimes, it's generic, and there's an opportunity for more follow-up questioning potentially. So.
Commissioner Townsend, do you have a question? I haven't seen your hand.
No, Mr. Chair, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I did want to just follow up, since we had maintenance of city streets there. Number 1 is what the folks in this survey were wanting to see improvements on, some trend level data from past surveys on maintenance of streets. And you can see where it sat back, and I'll just go back to 2020, 42% satisfaction. And then that dropped 12% in 2022, then another 11% to only 19% roughly, saying that they're just not real satisfied with the streets in the community. Following up,
Commissioner Stites.
Stites, District 7. So when you're talking about the maintenance of city streets, I know that you're saying that this survey went out countywide, right? So somebody could respond to this, and we're not notating, or we wouldn't know if they're saying this is a Bonner Springs Street or an Edwardsville Street, because they just got the survey and they mailed it back in, right? So there's no differentiating of what city street they're talking about, or actually any of this.
So on those, when we're talking city streets, in this example, remember we split the county for the first time in survey into county and city. So this would have been a city type question, not necessarily a county in this example, this evening. Does that make?
So it would have only gone to KCK cities?
For a maintenance of city streets, yes.
So like if it was a county, I mean, the park, then it would apply to county.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wanna make sure.
Yep, thank you. There was a couple follow-up questions on, and this doesn't tie into the important satisfaction, but we do ask sometimes questions that drill down a little bit more. So in this question, infrastructure priorities, which three of the following do you think should be the UG's top priorities? It's sticking with that infrastructure theme, patching of potholes, 80%, maintenance of existing infrastructure, that could be streets and bridges, and then number three, restoration of failed or closed infrastructure. Lastly, I did want to go ahead and throw up, county services priority from that county survey, which of the following should the UG focus on? Motor vehicle, 45% said we need to, or the governing body should look at that, maybe improve services, parks and rec, and senior services. And I will say, we looked at parks and rec, even motor vehicle, I don't have it, but there is a slide that asked for a little bit of detail on motor vehicle. I'll say, all in all, it did fairly well. Even the areas of dissatisfaction where the folks had to go in person, that level of dissatisfaction was about a third of the folks saying they were dissatisfied. So it's not anything overwhelmingly that they were unhappy with. So just point that out. Then I'm going to switch over to Adrian to talk about the dot talk.
Hi, my name is Adriana Lemafar. I'm a senior budget analyst for the UG. And I'm going to talk about our community outreach events that we had this year. So I liked Commissioner Bynum's question about what does that question on that survey mean? Because that's part of the reason why we do the events as well, because they allow you to dig deeper into the questions that we're asking our residents. So we don't have the benefit of a randomly selected, statistically representative sample that we have with the survey. But with the events, we do get the opportunity to dig deeper with our residents and have longer form conversations. So first, I'm going to talk about our dot talk that we had this year. This was our 4th annual dot talk, which is our community conversation on the budget. And this year, like most years, we really wanted to understand the residents' priorities. So we did change the dot talk format this year. We only had one event at a centrally located location. And we also invited all of our departments out for a tabling session prior to the roundtable discussions. So, and we really liked doing that because it offered context to the budget discussions in terms of what their tax dollars are paying for. And this year, after the tabling session with our departments, we asked 5 discussion questions of our residents in attendance. We split out into roundtables. And with the discussion topics, we essentially wanted to know, what are your priorities for the 2026 budget? What do you want to see more of? What could you live without? And one of the things that we asked them about was we actually asked them to rank the commission priorities and importance to them. So we have those 4 commission priorities of ensuring fiscal sustainability, fostering economic development, customer service and communication, and infrastructure. And of our 4 tables, the 2 priorities that were most important to them were the customer service and the economic development. Overall, I will say that generally residents at the dot talk were interested in investing in Wyandotte County and creating economic growth. Interestingly, they also wanted us to be strategic about our economic growth and make sure that our development benefits the entire county. So secondly, we had our public input session last week. And this is a little word cloud of the substantive words that people shared with us that they would like to see next year. And from this input session, we essentially got a very similar message that we heard at the dot talks, which was that people wanted to see us invest in the community and they want to see economic growth as well. Some specific areas of the budget that were mentioned were infrastructure, public safety, public health, aging, developmental disabilities, transit, parks, livable neighborhoods, and planning. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Administrator, you have any comments you'd like to make?
Well, I think what you've seen so far in the, in our budget process is that we are trying to bring to you different topics that we're dealing with within our staff, that we are listening to our public, and that we're bringing it back to let you know what we are hearing. And we are then going to be bringing you more information. So our goal is to help you make the best, most informed decision to serve our citizens. That's what I have. Commissioner Burrows?
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Thank you, Mr. Johnston. The staff, thank you for the presentation. I know the commission had plenty of comments, plenty of questions. I will now, this closes out our session this evening. This was for information only, but if there's questions that the commission would like to ask before we entertain a motion to adjourn, now would be the time to do it. But I would like to keep us on schedule. So please be mindful that if there's more than one question, your other colleagues may want to ask. So please, Commissioner Burns.
Yes, it would be proper to make a motion.
This is for information only. Motions aren't allowed in a meeting. That's information only, but
So when were we going to vote yes or no on neutral, revenue neutral?
July.
Why do we have to wait that long? I
Commissioner-
mean, we don't have to.
No, but part of the process that I don't think is very well explained, and Commissioner, being the former county clerk, you probably understand this.
That was a long time ago.
We're in the process right now, the clerk's office, of creating budget sheets for all of our taxing entities that gives them the information they will need to build their budgets. Our intention is to have those out tomorrow to the budget, to all of our taxing entities. They're not going to have enough information to proceed forward to even begin to look at a budget until they get this information.
Well, why does that preclude us from voting on it or not?
It wouldn't preclude you from voting. It's just that I don't think that all of our entities are going to have enough information to be able to relay to you that this is what will happen if you go revenue neutral. So we need to get.
Answer your question, Commissioner, is a topic like you're wanting to ask had not been agendized to the public, and therefore we can't legally ask the rest of your colleagues to vote on it. So until it's been properly agendized, you and your colleagues can't address it.
Well, I'd like to see it then on the June 26th agenda.
any other questions or comments? Commissioner King?
Thank you. I've said this from day one. We have an outstanding workforce. One of the things, and I talked about this earlier, when I first got here and we went on a retreat, they said, what's one of your top 3 items? I said, I want to be a better employer to our employees. And I mean it. I haven't changed. 20 years, that's been one of my top 3 things. And our employees have done an outstanding job, and that's why I care for them.
Commissioner Davis?
Be brief. The calendar. So I know last year when we voted to not exceed revenue neutral, we had to hurry up and come up with the budget. I just want to get it on record. Is that the same scenario this year? Okay, I see you're shaking your head. No,
No.
please explain.
No, and I have the budget calendar actually right here. June 15th is the date that the clerk has to provide all of the assessed property valuations to all of our entities. July 20th is the last day to notify the clerk whether or not the intent is to go revenue neutral. September 20th, you have to hold your budget hearings. October 1st is the deadline by which the clerk has to receive the budgets.
And that is whether or exceeding revenue neutral, not exceeding revenue neutral, same deadline, October 1st.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. This year they amended it so that the deadline runs the same.
Okay, thank you.
One thing we haven't had an opportunity to visit about is we haven't received the results of the 2024 audit that will set the tone for our budgeting process. And I would just like to remind us that until we receive that audit, we're working with hypothetical numbers. If we want to do due diligence, if I've heard correctly from members of the commission this evening, that it's important that we get these numbers accurate so we can make the decisions necessary. There was one other comment. Commissioner Stites, we talked about the city and county, and Mr. Graham, you presented that very well. Thank you. Staff, we sincerely appreciate the work you're putting into this to help guide us, make the decisions that need to be made. I know that there's not a commissioner sitting here that wants to do harm to the local unit of government and to its employees. So please understand that emotions do run high. We have concerns and we're passionate about each and every one of you, this community in general, but we all also answer to a constituency outside of this office too. And so our ears are everywhere, but we sincerely appreciate the information you brought forward tonight. It will help guide us through the budget. And I know some of this information is not easy to digest and it's not easy to understand, but at the same time, it needs to be presented and discussed anyway. So if there's no other questions or comments.
Second.
We have one more comment, ladies and gentlemen, from Commissioner Burns.
Yeah, here again, we're running in place again and not getting anywhere. And at some point, it would be nice if common sense would prevail.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. Just to really every department head and staff member, we sincerely appreciate everything you do. I kind of wanted to speak to the Public Works team, Troy. The survey says, and it probably says this every time, maintenance of city streets. Well, that survey result drove increases for the Public Works Division. And I was looking back at an email that you shared with me last year about how many streets we were able to repave, particularly in my at-large district. And I really don't know about the other at-large district, but massive amounts of neighborhood roads were repaved last year, all the way from 91st to 51st and up and down into the neighborhoods along Leavenworth Road. It was quite remarkable. It's painful to see what they did last year and still hear maintenance of city streets, but I get it because I drive on State Avenue and Parallel too. And so I just want to point out, for example, a State Avenue or a Parallel, and you can certainly come to the microphone and correct me, I would think those would tend to be a project we would fund with local dollars and then hopefully some city dollars and some federal dollars. That is how we did the Leavenworth Road reconstruction project. It was all three entities putting money into that project. So please, if you don't mind, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, I was just thinking how frustrating it must be for you, knowing what your department did last year, to hear that you're still sitting at the top of the survey result for needs more, so.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. And Troy Shaw, County Engineer and Public Works Director. Answer your first question, Leavenworth Road, I'll start with that one. Leavenworth Road is currently K5 as well, so it's a state highway. So that's the majority of the reason, and we completely rebuilt Leavenworth Road, new curbs, new everything. So it was a project through KDOT. So there was federal funding for that. State and Parallel or not, State Avenue is no longer a state highway anymore. So it's 100% local road. And if a mill and overlay or something like that is considered maintenance, very rarely, or if ever, have we found money for maintenance of paving roads. So usually 99% of the time, any mill and overlays or work like that is just done with local funds. So that kind of answers that question. On to the point of, am I upset about the results? It's 100% expected. We've been here, I think I don't know how many, I've been in this position or in the county engineer position for 8 years now. Ever since we've been doing community surveys, roads have been the number one. We've been in front of commission multiple times, as you're aware, and I'll note that you noted the amount we did last year. The 24, I believe, funds were set up. We were somewhere around $14 million a year for pavement preservation at that point. Commission has done a great job. Prior to that, the few years before that, we met and worked on the outcomes and strategies document. And you guys committed to upping that funds 25% a year. I think we're around 2 or 3 years into that prior to 2025. So that's great. We got up to 14 million, and we've said before, it seems like a crazy number to get the PCI score to 65, where commission has wanted to go. We met with you a few years ago. It's up to about $28 million a year is what we need to get there over the next 15 to 20 years. So 14 million is great. It's a big task, and we're moving forward. And we noted this previously with Dwayne and the street department here. They do a great job. Last year, they patched about 41,000 potholes in our community. What we see with the pavement stuff, people want more potholes patched, but it's kind of sad to say that we want more potholes patched, because what we really want is our roads to be better, right? So people shouldn't even be thinking about wanting more potholes patched, because we don't want the potholes there at all. If our roads were in the condition that we expect them to be in, or that we want them to be in, then we wouldn't have to patch potholes. I've gave this stat before too, but Overland Park, for example, patched 1,050 potholes last year. We patched 41,000. So that tells you the difference in condition of the road. If the roads were in good condition, there's a lot less potholes patched. So those Dwayne's crews and all the hours they spend on that could be doing other services for the community as well. So
Thank you very much.
Mr. Administrator, moving forward, I know that we talked about the sales tax revenue that is coming in. If there was an opportunity for staff to put together collectively the amount of revenue that comes from sales tax may be a benefit. When we look at percentages, I think sometimes we were lost on the sum of money that represents. So we might want to look at the growth from 24 to 26 on the amount of sales tax increase that we have seen, and also the increased valuation of property in Wyandotte County. I know with new developments coming in, as well as TIFs and CIDs and tax abatements falling off, it would be nice to have a total dollar value and not a percentage presented, so that we have an idea of what kind of money, real dollars we're talking about versus percentages. That may be of help with us on the budget, if that's possible, Mr. Administrator.
Now, one of the law changes that were made just a couple months ago forces us to provide you that information, because when incentives come off annually, we have to take a certain percentage of that to apply those dollars to property tax or debt relief annually. So we do have to go through that exercise anyway. We'll report that out to you.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. I
Commissioner, we
believe
have a hand raised.
Miss Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Townsend, District 1. Just very quickly, I also wanted to commend the efforts of our street department, who try to make very little go a long way. Last year, when we talked about whether to go revenue neutral for 2025, I specifically mentioned this was one of the issues that I'm sure our constituents wouldn't be happy with regard to the roads, and particularly parallel. Maybe we can look at what would happen if we gave parallel and state more emphasis and less on the side streets, because we've got more people going up and down traversing state and parallel than a lot of the side streets. Just a thought. But whatever we do, I do want to commend our street department and public works for what they have done with very little. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend. I will now recognize a motion and a second for adjournment. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Burns,
Aye.
Kane, Stites, motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your patience with us.